I think it might be interesting to go off on an entirely different tangent for a moment.
Okay.
For this, I'll need you to be sitting in the chair sideways to the camera. And I'll tell you when you're back far enough.
I
That,
can tip the
that'd be
camera.
good. And just tilt the screen down a little. Yeah, perfect. So, yeah, that's good. So you're sitting there and and it's good. You're sitting on the front edge of it. Your feet are flat on the ground, right? They're all right. Now
Yep.
let your arms, well, first of all, just explore a little of that kind of movement that we talked about in sitting, a little back and forth, where you're using this sort of imaginary arrow through your seated center of gravity to go back and forth a little bit. You can feel that, you can feel how that affects um, how your sits bones are taking the support of the chair, right?
Yeah.
Now we're gonna modify this. First of all, have your arms hanging free at your side. And what I want you to do is explore those back and forth movements, maybe increase them a little bit in amount, but be very aware of your arms. You notice on the back movement just then, and both and forward, your arms are staying, I won't say glued to your torso, but they're not operating on their own. Can you sense that? You're a little
Yeah.
bit holding them in the same place for different positions on the chair.
Okay.
So what you want to do is practice going back and forth a little and letting your arms just fall.
Like
Yeah,
fall a little
just let
more.
them do their thing. They're independently, yes. And it takes a little practice because, yeah, you notice how you had to sort of sneak in there at the end to get them to drop. You want them to be dropping the whole time you're moving. Good. That's good. Now, how about increasing the amount of forward movement? Keep going and let the arms just fit in. The arms are not doing the movement. They're just fitting in. And go as far forward as you comfortably can, letting the arms drop. Good. That's plenty. Now just hang out there for a second. And gradually, what I want you to do gradually is to come back towards sitting, but do it very slowly. Very slowly, let the arms continue to just hang free, hang free. Now let's pause there for a second. You're not quite fully at verticality, but you're pretty close. Can you sense that?
Yes.
So this last little bit is in a way the most critical. I want you to, in a moment, continue heading towards verticality, but do so very slowly and with your arms hanging free the whole time. Very slowly.
Want me to start?
Yeah. Uh-huh. And I might stop you at some point, like right there, right there. Now, what does that feel like to you?
Um, Feels comfortable.
Does it feel like that's where you would have stopped if I hadn't stopped you?
Oh, good question. And no, I feel like it's slightly forward. Like I would have gone back more.
Right. And there's a tiny bit more that you could rotate around your sits bones, just around a little bit more. Yeah, right there, stop there. Now,
Mm-hmm.
now,
There, yeah, I
but
can feel it
now,
in my sits bones now.
yeah, but what do you think you would do on your own at this point? Would you have stopped there, or would you add something else?
What was my goal? Just to sit up?
Yeah, yeah. just to return to sitting.
I mean, I probably would have like come up a
Yeah,
little higher.
something, maybe not quite that extreme, but
Yeah, but I
something
think I
like
would
that.
have, I think I would have perked up a little bit
Okay, and
more.
notice what you did. You arched your lower back. Go ahead and do it. Hold that new, yeah, stay there for just a second. You're
Mhm.
arching your lower back. Your shoulders are coming back in space. And I think you're even lifting them a little bit.
Yeah,
You're
I
kind of
think so.
lifting part of your torso, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Kind of setting it really, as in ready,
Hmm.
set, go that we talked about before. Um,
Yep.
it's all extra stuff that you don't need. So could you come a little forward, arms free, maybe even a little more, and now return to being vertical, but don't go a little bit more, tiny bit more. That's about all you need right there. Anything else
Okay.
is going to be extra work.
Okay. So
So
like bringing my arms into the equation here.
it needs some practice because I think your habit, I think most people's habits would be to kind of keep them in the same relation to your torso
Hmm.
throughout the movement. But clearly, just biomechanically, the work of moving is all coming from your core, your torso, your legs, not from your arms. Your arms are just appendages that are hanging free.
Right.
And you might notice that there's a little different way in which they're connected to your torso. If you were to kind of go into the exaggerated thing for a second, yeah. Can you feel that something's going, they have a different relationship with your torso now? Can you sense that?
Like a muscle in my shoulders.
Well, more, all right, let's put it this way. There's a widening across your upper torso.
Hmm.
And when you go to that over straightening, you,
Yes.
you're narrowing, it's the widening is lessened.
Okay.
Can you sense that?
Wide across like the front.
Just, yeah, the width. You're basically your width across the upper part of your torso
Hmm.
is being a little compromised because you're not only pushing that upper part back, but you're also shortening, compressing your whole upper torso.
Hmm.
Can you sense that a little bit?
So like like compressing to me would be like squishing
That's
smaller, but
forward compression, but there's
backward
the other
compression.
kind that's just as
Oh,
insidious.
so an overextending would also be called compression.
Overextending. Exactly. Exactly. Now, if you're there nicely poised, you're not doing any of that over straightened stuff.
Okay.
And you know where your seated center of gravity is? It's at the level of the bottom of your sternum.
I know. Got it.
But you also know that if you were to stand up pretty quickly, that center of gravity would drop down to below your navel.
Right.
So this could be a little tricky. You don't have to worry about the exact timing. But in a moment, if you were to rotate forward using your seated center of gravity, and then at some point, bring yourself to standing. At that point, when you're in off the chair, but not fully standing yet, the center of gravity to think about close enough is the one below your navel.
Okay.
So that would be what you want to get forward a bit and up to be standing.
Hmm.
Just go
Yeah.
ahead and do that and see what happens. Good, good. Now, that was pretty good. Did you notice when you got to your full height, did it seem like on your own you might have added a little of that other stuff,
Oh, for sure.
but you didn't very much, right?
Well, I
Hardly any.
was I was allowing myself to think center of gravity one, center of gravity two,
Yeah,
and just kind of letting that lead.
yeah. And another way of approaching this for a moment, if you were to sit down again
You
and
want me to?
yeah, just have a seat. Good. And this time, when you get when you're at a place that's close to, but not at the what you might think of as the end of the line when you're now I'm standing kind of thought. If you would stop a little short of that and switch over to the thought, any direction. I'm free. I'm not compressing myself since we've been talking about that would be a perfect one. And let that direction be the determination of what happens as you go to your full height.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead and do that.
So center of gravity,
Yeah,
direction.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
What did that seem like to you?
It just seems so balanced and healthy.
And can you sense what your habitual final bit in that movement from sitting to being vertical might have been if you had just done it without
Yeah, it would have been over the top, extreme, like I always am.
right. Well, so here, I mean, the way you're standing now might in the past and might even now feel to you as though I'm not quite legitimately standing up. Something along those lines, like I'm I'm close to it, but I haven't done that final little maneuver that tells me now I'm standing.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, interesting.
The unnecessary little maneuver that I think I need to do or have done in the
Well, pretty
past.
much everybody needs to do it.
Uh-huh.
Um, and just for fun, just in that new, slightly different version of standing up that you're doing now, could you just decide to take that for a walk
Sure,
around
you
the
mean,
room? Yeah, to,
sure.
to that back door and back kind of.
Sure. So I'm taking my direction with me or the
That would
center of
be good.
gravity or
Yeah, I'm
both.
not compressing myself. That'd be a nice one to take.
That's the one I was using.
Yeah, and just take it with you for the walk.
I have been using this a lot lately, and I just really love this direction. I
And
think it's because it was very alarming to me to realize that I was really compressing myself.
yeah, and just as you're walking right now, what does that feel like with your feet contacting the ground? And just generally, what does that walk seem like to you?
I mean, it feels light, feels, um,
If
I feel
after
like I weigh less.
yeah, so how about for this last walk, after you make that turn near the door, switch over to I'm green. Nonsense thought.
Yeah, I'm heavy. I feel more weight in my hips.
Yeah,
I
and
feel more weight in
can
my feet.
you even with the I can't hear it from here, but even with the sound of your feet, can you hear
Hmm.
a little
Yeah, I mean, I'm
more?
wearing My
more
shoes are.
noise, right? But
Hmm.
we don't even have to put the special shoes on for this, right?
You don't want my special shoes today.
No, we don't need it because I think you can sense without that.
Uh-huh.
But
I
there,
just feel heavier.
yeah, yeah. Well, that what you would describe as that feels heavier, that's the way, that's pretty close. It's not going to be exactly the same, but that's pretty close to your habitual way of walking
Yeah.
before.
Yes.
Now, I think your habitual way of walking without directions and just doing it without giving any thought has changed over the last few weeks, but
Hmm.
you're getting like a little return. You can sense what when you throw that away and replace it with a nonsense thought, how you're immediately thrust back into an older pattern.
Hmm.
And that's a nice kind of experiment to occasionally do. There's no harm in deliberately, consciously going back or creating a situation where you're going to go back to your habitual walk. It's not like,
Right.
oh, I must never do that again, anything like that.
Hmm.
It's often very useful to deliberately set things up so that you can compare your newer walk with your older walk.
Away.
It's just
Hmm.
a nice thing. Alexander himself said, he said, throw it away. And the reason he would say that, and he has a quote saying, yeah, throw it away because, in his view, now you've got an opportunity to sense what you have been doing, and you have an opportunity to use what you know to come out of that.
Yes.
And that second thing, that ability to just notice
Hmm.
something's not what I would like, and just not stop and take stock of things, but just as I'm walking, I'm shifting to a thought that in fact will bring me back to
What
whatever
I've learned.
whatever
Hmm.
an easier, more efficient pattern of
You
moving.
know, and Robert, something to consider. Can I bring my chair back?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah.
Something that I've really been thinking about is, at first you think, changing how you think when you walk. That's such a small change. Is that really going to make you overall better? But when you start to think about use these directions, they start little by little, week by week for me, they start popping into literally everything I do. And that adds up to my whole waking existence. Like like it seems small to think use a direction when you walk, or use a direction when you cook, or use a direction when you sing, use a direction when you sit. And that all adds up to a lot. Like at
Absolutely.
first I thought like, gosh, these are such small things. Like how is thinking this way when I walk gonna help me? But all those little pieces add up to making a higher quality of how I do every single thing I do when I'm awake and conscious.
Yeah, absolutely.
I laugh at myself. I come to make breakfast and coffee by myself in the morning, and I go yank that coffee pot, and I'm like, what am I doing?
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
you're not doing, Celeste. You're not doing.
Yeah. And walking, I walking, and we've talked about it before, but just to be really clear, walking is just a very useful activity to explore directions.
Mhm.
You don't want to ever get into a thing, well, really, I'm learning how to walk better and the other stuff, who knows? It's just a really good activity, especially with a firm floor. And if you're sort of starting from scratch, experimenting, having hard sole shoes that will give you an audio feedback. But that's just for you to become comfortable with the direction. But yeah, as you said,
Mhm.
it can apply to everything.
Mhm.
That's the
Yeah.
whole idea. Uh,
Mhm.
Alexander had a phrase that he borrowed from, Alexander was Australian. I think we've talked about that. And apparently, Australians are well known for loving to go to horse races and gamble. I think more than any other country. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know because I've never been
People do it in Columbus, so.
there. Yeah, but this was a long time ago, and he would go. He was a bettor. But he wouldn't just bet on horses. He would go out to the track ahead of time and he would watch the horses as they were being kind of walked around by their trainer and whatever. He'd observe them. He would then look at what the odds were, and he would see if there was a horse that wasn't especially high up in the rankings, but seemed to be moving really nicely that day, or a horse that was high up in the rankings but seemed a little off. He was able to take that knowledge and make some money on it. And in fact, um, the legend is that he was someone gave him a tip on a horse that had very high 20 to 1 kind of odds, and he bet on it and got enough money to get on a ship and go to England. So the origins of the Alexander technique are, but anyway, he came up with a word to describe the quality of our movement, which is
Mm.
use, USE. It's like spelled the same as use, but use, it's a noun. And it's a term that really it is kind of a term that describes the quality of how you move in general. Alexander teachers like to talk about good use and poor use and whatever. So learning how to have, let's say, good or better use in walking, and then getting some information about what's been useful to do that will carry over into everything else.
Mhm.
Um, it's unlikely that you're going to have really good use for some things, and terrible use for others. There may be a few examples where you hate doing something, like if you hate cleaning the floors, you might get into a state about it. But generally speaking, use is something that cuts across quite a range of activities.
Mm.
And so what you're doing with direction, self-directions, is improving the quality of your use.
Mhm.
Not, and if you happen to be walking at that moment, obviously the walking will be easier, but it really applies to everything that you.
Right.
So,
Mhm.
so any questions about anything we've talked about today?
Okay. When I was back on the chair, I wasn't able to take any notes. So I will watch this video back and be able to take a little bit of notes from there. But is there anything specifically you'd want me, anything I write, I really meditate on what the notes that I wrote. And so is there anything specifically from the chair activity or the walking activity that you wanted, specifically something you would have said that I may not have caught or written down on my own?
Well, you could experiment with that, first of all, with that little back and forth movement.
Uh-huh.
You've had opportunity to use that in meetings, for
Mhm.
example. And I assume no one said, what are you doing,
No,
Celeste?
because you do it so subtle. You know,
Right,
it's not
right.
it's only I knew about it, which made it almost kind of funny, you know?
Yeah, yeah. So you could always enhance any of these activities by bringing a direction to bear as you do them. So, we started with you just moving, but I'm just moving back and forth on my sits bones a little bit, but I could add a direction like, oh, I'm free to move back and forth, or I'm not compressing myself as I move back and forth. And then when I want to go to standing, well, I'm taking a direction we worked on earlier, just really focusing on that last little part of the voyage from sitting to standing. But there's no reason after you had a little practice with that, because that's the critical moment, really. Is
Okay, that last moment.
arrival on your feet. And the old habit says, okay, that's great that you're on your feet, but you may have to add something to be legitimately standing.
Hmm.
That's the thing you want to be on the watch for. But if you could just decide, well, why not use the direction for the entire voyage? And chances are, when you get to that critical point, if you're still thinking the direction,
Yeah.
or have been thinking it even, that you will automatically stop short of what you would habitually do.
Okay.
So there's a lot of, I don't want these ever to be exercises that are done as sort of, okay, 5 standing ups, 2.
Yeah, okay. And that's a good to remind me because I know that, but I can get myself in the habit of thinking, I'm going to practice. I need to practice.
But the thing
So
is,
good
you
reminder.
can you can practice, first of all, you can practice anytime.
Hmm.
And yeah, we definitely don't want to be obsessed about thinking directions all day long. That's,
Okay.
but you can bring them to bear whenever you feel like it.
Hmm.
Now, a lot of times in the real world, you might have to get yourself in a teeny bit of a state before it dawns on you that, maybe there's something here that I could change without any effort, with
Hmm.
zero effort other than just a little mental thought.
Yes.
That's that may not happen all the time until things have gotten out of hand a little bit.
Yeah, that's often when I catch it, but
But over time, you're going to catch it much earlier.
hmm.
You don't have to wait till the canary keels over and dies to know it's time to leave
Yes.
behind.
And I
The
definitely did those.
canary may look a little unhappy, and that might be a better time to leave because she could even save the canary's life. Um,
Yes.
anyway, no, I think you're totally on the right track. Just continue, and if questions come up, we'll definitely deal with them.